Hey everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations, and in this video I want to show you the exact process that I use when I'm looking at an astrology chart, how I orientate myself, how I look at the new and full moon reports, and how I actually teach astrology to my students. So I'm really excited to get into this video with you today. Before I do that, I do want to remind you that this is video 4 in a series, and there's 3 more that come before this, of course. So if you haven't watched those first 3, I do encourage you to go back and watch them first. There is a link in the description and the comment section, okay? All right. Now, in terms of reading an astrology chart and what process I use, I just want to quickly recap what we have been learning up until this point in time. Just very simply, that I've been showing you that somatic learning is a really powerful way to understand and read a chart and be able to trust your intuition, okay? And I showed you that really what the first step is that we need to take to be able to do this is looking at and seeing that life is consistently expressing itself. And that in these expressions are these patterns, and that what astrology does is really kind of label these patterns. And even though we have not learned astrology, we still have experienced these patterns, right? They're still within us. In other words, the wisdom of life is contained within us. And when we learn to access that, this is where we can really cultivate and begin to cultivate trust, learning the archetypes. Now, from this pace, I showed you a direct example of how you could actually see the difference between memorization of information and then trying to tell somebody versus communicating from your direct experience of, say, a transit that you've had. Notice the difference there, right? And I hope that really kind of helped you connect to the difference between communicating from wisdom versus just like a memory process. So when we take that and we begin to implement it in the next process that I want to show you, you'll see that there's actually quite a lot more that you need to know, but those are the first things you need to get sort of ready for. But this process is a little bit more complicated in terms of really getting the truth of the chart. And I want to show you what that process is so you can actually be seeing how I apply what I've been talking about to a chart reading, okay? So let's do that. So here we have an astrology chart. You've seen this all the time, like when you're looking at your own chart or other people's charts. So here is my process that I go through. So step 1 in this process is, I call it gathering information. And here I'm going to be looking at the chart, and my main purpose is to gather information. And this is important because I want to really be able to know the symmetry of the chart. So I'm going to start off by paying attention to the karmic axis. In evolutionary astrology, the karmic axis is important because it helps you understand what the soul purpose is coming here for. Why does the soul come here into this lifetime? And we need that because it tells us the underlying part of the chart, its orientation. So I'm going to be looking at the karmic axis, right? Pluto, South Node, etc. Then I'm going to be looking at the repeating themes in the chart. Like, where are there retrogrades? So I'm going to be noticing some retrogrades in the chart. I can notice there already Neptune is retrograde. I'm also going to be looking for things like squares to the nodes, which is exclusively an evolutionary astrology perspective. I'm also going to be starting to look at the symmetry again of the chart, meaning where are the planets in the chart, right? Are they more towards this hemisphere? What's the rising sign, etc. And I'm going to be gathering these repeating themes. And again, this is important because I'll start to see a pattern emerge from this process, okay? Then I'm going to be looking at what is called aspects and phases and planetary relations. This is again exclusive. And the reason why I want to look at this is because I want to understand the individual context. This is what differentiates all of our charts. If you're not looking at aspects and phases in a chart, you might as well just be sort of just describing generic information, because there are very unique experiences that are very different for different people when you look at phasal relationships. So in this chart, I'm looking at Uranus Moon, it's a new phase. If somebody had, say, a balsamic phase Uranus Moon, even though it's still the same context and the same sign, they're actually going to experience themselves differently. So it's important to look at phasal relationships, and I'm gathering this information. I'm noticing, again, the phasal relationship between Moon, Uranus, it's new phase, the balsamic phase between Mercury and Jupiter. I see there's a new phase between the Sun and Venus. Mars is in crisis in consciousness with Pluto. So these phasal relationships are giving me a lot of information, a lot of context to what's actually going on in the chart, right? So from this point onwards, I'm going to now say, okay, I've actually got quite a lot of information here, And I want to do now step 2. So in this phase, I'm actually taking a step back from this gathering information. And now I want to stop guessing. Okay, so step 2 is the ability to stop guessing, stop trying to figure it out, stop trying to go, okay, what does this all mean? And then, just bring all of my information to the chart over here, all these memorized words. I want to stop that. And I want to say, okay, I'm going to stop guessing. I want to break the pattern of trying to put information out there. And I want to look at, what is the underlying story in the chart? And the way that I do that is by starting to say, what's the difference between the mechanics versus why the soul has chosen these dynamics to come out to live through? The difference is, one's a personal story, the other one is just describing planetary systems. Like you can describe Moon in Scorpio to 20 people and they'll be like, yeah, that's right. But what's the reason that the soul has chosen Moon in Scorpio relative to other planetary systems in the chart? That's a whole different level of depth. So I'm not guessing, step 1. I'm breaking that frame of mind. I'm not going to try and figure it out. Step 2, I'm going to recognize that it's important to look at the story, and I do this by whying, right? Why did this happen? Why has the soul chosen this? And then finally, I'm going to start to feel kind of a sense of red thread. What's the story in the chart? Yeah. So I've noticed all this information that I've gathered. I just want to kind of sort of build a little bit of a story. I notice this is about truth for this person. I notice there's a lot of need for discernment. I notice that there is an impact around what type of relationships, transformation. Okay, so relationship, transformation, and truth and discernment seems to be important here. Cool, that's it. I've got the symmetry, right? I've pulled a red thread together based on what I've seen, and now I've got the kind of the landscape. I know what it looks like, right? There's a scope of what I can think about and see and feel and see versus just randomly pulling out information, right? So what is the scope that this chart is experiencing? From here, I'm going to now move into phase 3 or step 3, which is I'm stepping back even further from the chart, and I'm going to feel. So I'm feeling the astrology chart. I want to feel the nature of that Uranus new phase to the moon, right? I want to try and access those patterns that I know I've experienced in different ways, or I've heard other people talk about in different ways, and I can connect to the emotion or to the experience that potentially comes around with those charts. Like Pluto in the 8th house. What does that feel like? Right? I know that it's Pluto in the 8th house can be, all these different definitions, but I want to feel betrayal. Right? What does that feel like? What does abandonment feel like? When have I experienced loss? I just want to connect to that. I want to connect to the nature of truth. So I'm feeling into what is truth. Where does it function? Really allowing myself to drop into the essence of these planetary systems. And notice, in this space, I'm not even trying to figure anything out. I'm just allowing myself to connect with what I have seen and taken in. And that's important because when you're doing this, again, you're stopping all of the information from being projected onto a chart. Your intuition is starting to become clear. You're starting to really feel the experience. And at this point, like I said again, there's no mental gymnastics. You're really in the body and you're accessing wisdom and you're cultivating connection. Okay. From this place, once I've connected to that feeling thing, I'm going to now lean into inquiry. So now I'm leaning back forward again through this more somatic, through this more deep connection. I'm moving forward and I'm going into inquiry. And here, my curiosity is going to lead me to connect with the person. This is important. When we're asking questions through our curiosity, when we're allowing our intuition to bubble up things that we feel and sense or knowing in this chart. Like for instance, we're going to lead with the question, hey, how many times have you aligned with the truth and then realized that it wasn't the one for you? And immediately that question, when it lands to the client or it lands in you, it awakens an experience of these things. And what you've actually done right now, the reason why this is so important, is you've tethered together your identity and your experience, and this brings you closer to the truth of the chart. And this process is deeply empowering. There's a synthesis here. You can see and feel and experience the depth, and your intuition is guiding it, you're trusting it because somebody is connecting with real life experiences. So that's my process, right? Pretty neat, isn't it? And this is what I'm going to be teaching in the Astrology Immersion course. I'm going to be showing you exactly the details of how to get this done. I'll show you how to look at the retrogrades. I'll show you how to look at the karmic axis, how those new phase and balsamic phase energies feel, etc. And I'll show you exactly the step-by-step process. And I'll teach this in this program, okay? So be on the lookout for when I release some information on that. Now, in the next video, what I'm going to show you is a very specific example of what it looks like when you are up and running and you're reading in a chart from this perspective, okay? I think it's going to be great because you'll really start to see the power of what I've done over here through the process of this example. So I can't wait to share that with you. That's going to be coming out super soon. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for listening. Write in the comment section if you've got something to ask me. Otherwise, have a great day. Bye.